All right. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Matthew Pavogel, and I'm an individual preparedness specialist at New York City Emergency Management. On behalf of New York City Emergency Management, I'd like to welcome everyone to today's National Preparedness Month event, Pets and Service Animal Preparedness Webinar. We're so excited that you joined today. Today, you'll hear from organizations such as the ASPCA, the Guide Dog Foundation, American Red Cross, and the New York City Emergency Management Animal Planning Task Force. So again, want to thank all the speakers that are here today. And before the speakers speak, I'd like to first introduce Commissioner Deanne Criswell from New York City Emergency Management. Thank you, Commissioner, for being here today.
You took some time to join our next virtual National Preparedness Month event. Again, my name is Deanne Criswell, and I'm the Commissioner of New York City Emergency Management, and I'm super excited to be here today with everybody. As New York City Emergency Management continues to promote National Preparedness Month, we also must acknowledge and be aware of the importance of the preparedness for our pets and service animals before, during, and after a disaster. As a pet owner, I take this part of our planning and our preparedness, our personal preparedness, very seriously.
Notification from Outlook.
Pets and service animals are a part of our family, and they should be included in all of your emergency preparedness plans. Today, we are joined by various pets and service animal organizations to give you tips and best practices for how you can care for and prepare your pets for any emergency that may occur in New York City, especially given the new challenges that COVID-19 has brought to our day-to-day lives. Before we begin, I would like to thank our speakers today. Jessica Sweeney, Senior Program Manager of Community Engagement at the ASPCA, Lauren Berglund, Consumer Services Coordinator at the Guide Dog Foundation and VETDOGS of America, Shay Holloway, Program Manager at the American Red Cross, and Andrew Perlman, Program Manager of Human Services from right here at New York City Emergency Management. Thank you all for taking the time to speak today. Thank you, everybody, for joining. And I hope you enjoy this event.
Thank you, Commissioner, for taking the time to speak today. So before we begin, I'm going to go through the agenda for our event going forward. So first, we're going to have Jessica Sweeney from the ASPCA speaking, then Lauren Berglund from the Guide Dog Foundation and America's VETDOGS, Shay Holloway from the American Red Cross, and then finally Andrew Perlman from New York City Emergency Management. After our speakers, we're going to have questions and answers for everyone who is on here today. So if you would like, anytime during the presentations today, please provide your questions in the chat box. So we'll allow for questions and answers after our speakers. So again, first up, Jessica Sweeney is going to speak from the ASPCA. So thank you, Jessica, for being here today.
Great. Thank you, Matt, and thank you, Commissioner, for the introduction. Hi, everyone. My name is Jess Sweeney, and I am with the ASPCA's Community Engagement Program here in New York. I'm very honored to be here today to talk to you all about the role that the ASPCA plays in disaster and emergency response, what we've done specifically to support pet owners in New York since the start of COVID-19, and most importantly, pet preparedness tips to consider and implement in your own homes, especially as we are in the midst of National Preparedness Month and a pretty active hurricane season. So just to run through the agenda quick, as you can see here on this slide, as I mentioned, first we'll touch on some planning tips specific to your pets, including things to keep in mind given the current climate we're in with this pandemic. Next, I'll briefly go through how the ASPCA provides expertise and resources to communities across the country that are impacted by disaster. Then I'll talk to you a bit about the response efforts during the pandemic that we've implemented and the resources we've been able to offer New York City residents during these especially challenging times. And then finally, I'll explain how our adoption center up on 92nd Street on the Upper East Side has pivoted its operations so that homeless animals can still find homes without putting staff or community members at risk. Next slide. So probably the most important part of today's presentation, and what I really hope everyone walks away with remembering, is how to ensure that you and your pet are ready should any kind of emergency or disaster occur. A pet's first line of defense in emergencies is a well-prepared owner like yourself, which is why it's most important than ever for pet owners to ensure they're prepared if disaster strikes. And considering the vital role our pets play in our lives, especially in times of crisis, as we know they're a huge source of love and comfort to us, it's extremely important to safeguard their health and welfare as much as we possibly can. So taking the time now to make a plan for your family, that includes your pets, can truly be life-saving.
New notification, comma.
So what does being prepared for your pet look like? First, you want to assess and create an overall action plan that takes into account everyone in your household and outlines where to meet if you're not together when a disaster strikes, and if an evacuation is necessary, where you'll all go. This plan should also include accommodations so that if you do evacuate for either a few days or for a longer period of time, that you're able to take your pet with you. This may seem obvious to most on this call, but it's crucial that you never leave your animal behind. What's not safe for you is not safe for your pet. And especially now with the pandemic stretching resources thin, the ability for first responders or agencies to go into homes to help retrieve animals is even more limited. Part of that action plan should also include choosing a trusted relative or friend who's located outside an evacuation zone who can take care of your pet in the event that you're not able to specifically. Again, it's particularly important right now when concerns around COVID exposure may limit your options here. So it's a good idea to have a backup caregiver as well, and to always check the CDC website for travel restrictions and quarantine requirements as these continue to change regularly, as you're all well aware. Next, you want to make sure you create a portable pet emergency kit with essential items, including your pet's medical records, water, food, bowls, medications, etc. Masks, gloves, and hand sanitizer, which are all now a normal part of our lives, should also be in not only your personal go bags, but not a bad idea to ensure your pet's kit has these items as well. For more details and ideas on what to include in your pet's bag, you can visit our website to download the full checklist. In addition to that go bag for your pet, you also want to make sure that your cat or dog is wearing an ID tag with your current contact information, so name, telephone, address. We also recommend checking your pet's microchip to ensure that your contact info is updated here as well. Additionally, it's really important, which you may not think about, but you probably already have, is to always have a photo of you with your pet at all times, whether on your phone or in your wallet. This way, if you are separated, it's much easier to identify them and get them back home to you safely. Part of that emergency kit prep should also include making sure you have the proper carrier or crate, collar, and leash to ensure your pet is secure when evacuating from your home and to prevent the possibility of escape or getting lost. If you know you're in the line of a disaster, like a major coastal storm or flooding, it's a good idea to prep that crate in advance and possibly consider creating them early. Not only does this ensure you're ready to go when you do decide to evacuate, but you'll have a much easier time finding your pet and putting them in the crate if they don't sense that level of urgency that comes with an immediate evacuation. And lastly, stay informed. Make sure you're familiar with the types of emergencies and disasters that can happen, whether or not your house or apartment building is located in a flooding zone, and awareness of the emergency planning that it's already established here in the city. It's really key to focus on preparing during this downtime so that taking advantage now to ensure you and your pet are set up for success, you won't experience as much stress during an actual disaster. So as some of you may know, the ASPCA is one of the national response agencies when it comes to disasters, not just with the expert tips and guidance we promote on our website and through social media, but also with boots on the ground support. Right now, you may have seen in the news that at the request of local agencies in Louisiana, our disaster response and relocation teams have been assisting with the care of animals displaced by Hurricane Laura, which you can see in some of these recent photos here. Since that request came in, we've relocated about 100 homeless animals out of the area and to a shelter in Florida. We've also set up and are running an emergency shelter to accommodate even more displaced pets who have been separated from their families, so that eventually they can be reunited once those owners are safe and more settled in their setups. In addition to relocation and emergency sheltering, our disaster response team is also equipped to facilitate technical animal rescue, so going out in the field to recover animals from these impacted areas, as well as setting up supply distribution centers and running mobile veterinary services. All of this is at the request of local and state level agencies, so our staff is continuously in contact with these groups to ensure we're ready to respond should assistance be needed and called upon. And so while hurricanes are typically what we think of when we talk about disasters, the coronavirus presented a different kind of emergency for our country, and in particular here in New York, where we began as the epicenter. We're very proud that our organization has been able to proactively respond during these times by pivoting our resources to help keep people and their pets together by operating a New York City pet hotline, distributing free pet food, and also by providing grants to shelters and rescues across the country so that they too can continue their important work. One of the main components of the ASPCA's response during the pandemic has been supporting, as I mentioned, the New York City Pet Hotline. Through the collaboration of the Animal Planning Task Force, which we'll hear about a little bit later, this group of agencies, which is led by New York City Emergency Management, came together to develop this one-stop shop or hub for questions and resources to support pet owners throughout this difficult time. The hotline is a toll-free number that was launched back in April and has been open daily from 8 in the morning until 8 in the evening, and gives New Yorkers a resource where they can reach out to learn how and where to access critical resources for their pets, like medical care, temporary boarding, free pet food, and expert information. And since launching, that hotline has assisted over 16,500 animals, with the majority of these calls being directly or indirectly related to the devastating impacts of COVID, like a sick family member or the loss of a job. So here you can see some of those other stats, like the number of calls we've assisted with, specifically relating to food and medical needs. And while the hotline will be wrapping up at the end of this month, if residents do still call, they'll be pointed to other resources by our client services team. So the support will still be there. So as I mentioned, pet food was a resource via the hotline, and I wanted to spend just a few slides talking about how those efforts, which were launched back in April, how they've impacted and created support for New York City residents, and how we continue to provide that service through the end of this month. And here you can see just a few of the photos of owners and pets that we've met along the way. So given the extent of the pandemic's impact to New York City's health and economy, we knew that pet-owning families would be faced with critical choices in terms of essential resources. So much like a response to a typical disaster, we needed to meet that basic need of food for pets to ensure no one would go hungry. So between April and June, to serve that immediate need, we distributed free food at our locations in the Bronx, Brooklyn, and Manhattan 7 days a week. And while we've since scaled back on distribution hours during the summer months, we've been able to continue providing food support to families who are still impacted, and will continue to do so through the end of this month. And through this service, we're proud that we have been able so far to assist over 77,000 animals, cats and dogs, throughout the 5 boroughs, which has been great. And here's just a photo outside of our Bronx Veterinary Center. In addition to that food support, medical expertise is another service we've been able to continue to provide the community in a modified way during the pandemic. Throughout the years, we've offered a variety of vet services to New Yorkers, such as spay and neuter and our animal hospital on the Upper East Side. And unsurprisingly, all of these had to be paused or adjusted in order to maintain safety and social distancing. So in an effort to continue supporting existing and new hospital clients, we developed telemedicine services. So virtual medical consults for non-urgent cases so that pets and owners could stay safe at home, but also receive medical expertise. In the Bronx and Brooklyn, we've been able to offer appointments for urgent care without fees, again, in an effort to support those most impacted by COVID who still needed help for their sick or injured pet. And just this month, we're slowly opening up these services to include things like basic care, preventative care, and vaccinations, which of course are important to keep updated for pets should a family need to evacuate due to a disaster. And in addition to the resources made available to pet owners here in New York, we've also been very busy updating content on our ASPCA Pro website, specific to assisting shelters and rescues, both locally and across the country, as all of us have been adjusting our operations through these unprecedented times. So by sharing that internal expertise with other agencies, we aim to continue impacting and helping as many animals as possible. And finally, I just wanted to touch base on our foster and adoption efforts during this time. Back in mid-March, with our city being the epicenter, along with all other non-essential services, we were mandated to close our adoption center doors. But despite that closure, all direct care was still operational and we had a full house of animals. So we sent out a call to action to move animals off-site, either into foster homes or to partner shelters located outside of the city. while also meeting internally to talk and strategize amongst ourselves on how we were going to continue the important work that we do under the new restrictions that we had. And like everyone else, we didn't know what the future would hold, but we knew we needed to be creative. So in the first few weeks of those stay-at-home orders, we saw a nearly 70% increase in animals going to foster homes through our program compared to the same time last year. And so there's no doubt that the response from the public to support local shelters and rescues has been enormous and unprecedented, and has truly been a bright spot for us during this pandemic. So a lot of that foster placement work, along with finding permanent placement with adoptive homes, has been conducted via remote virtual meet and greets so that animals can be placed into homes while ensuring the safety of staff, animals, pet owners, and our community at large. In order to facilitate that, the ASPCA launched online adoption services in mid-May, starting with kittens at our nursery and then quickly expanding to include all cats and dogs in our care, both on site at our 92nd Street facility and in foster homes across the city. And while you can follow us on social media and see posts about the cats and dogs looking for homes, our website is where you'll want to head to in order to submit any adoption inquiries. So how do you go about requesting a virtual meet and greet for an adoptable animal? On our website, you'll be guided to an online survey where you can indicate the cat or dog that you're interested in and provide answers to a series of basic questions. And it's important to note that even as we adapt our adoption policies in response to COVID, like this survey, we're still following practices that utilize a more conversation-based approach that creates still an enjoyable experience for the potential adopter and provides that person with the opportunity to ask questions to ensure a successful match, which is what we hope for, even when they return to a post-pandemic work-life schedule. And just last month in August, we found homes for over 110 animals. And in total, since all of this began, we've found homes for well over 450 cats and dogs, which is great. And here are just some of those successful outcomes on the slide. A pair of kittens on the top left, Luna and Midnight, whose new family met them through an ASPCA matchmaker and their foster parent on a three-way Zoom call before deciding to make it official with those two adorable kittens. And then Socks on the bottom right here found her home when her new owner filled out our online survey after deciding that her now permanent work from home setup was well suited for welcoming a dog into her life. And finally, just a quick call to action before I close. The Adoption Center is looking specifically for foster parents who are willing to open up their homes to a large-sized dog. So if you're at all interested, you can find out more info and submit an application on our website at aspca.org/foster. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Matthew.
Thank you, Jessica. Thank you for all that valuable information about your resources and also how to adopt pets. So again, thank you. Next up, we're going to have Lauren Berkland from the Guide Dog Foundation and America's Vet Dogs. So thank you, Lauren, for speaking today.
Or dogs that we place. Oh, it would help. There we go. Sorry about that. So I'm going to start by telling you a little bit about our organizations, about the dogs that we place. I'm going to tell you about what we've done during COVID-19 and the efforts that we have made to be able to continue serving our applicants and graduates. I'm going to talk a little bit about some assistance dog etiquette and then some expectations that you can have when it comes to service dogs. So the Guide Dog Foundation was started in 1946 and is located in Smithtown on Long Island. And we provide highly trained guide dogs to people who are blind or have low vision. A guide dog allows someone to have enhanced mobility and greater independence through stopping at changes in elevation and navigating around obstacles. Our sister organization, America's Vet Dogs, was founded in 2003 and places service dogs with veterans and first responders. We place guide dogs, hearing dogs, service dogs, PTSD service dogs, trained facility dogs, and then combat operational stress control dogs. It costs over $50,000 to raise, train, and place our assistance dogs. However, we always place our dogs completely free of charge to the individual. The Guide Dog Foundation and America's Vet Dogs are completely funded through donations. Through COVID-19, we've had to adjust this and change most of our fundraising efforts virtually, so that we were able to continue supporting our clients. During COVID-19 and our work from home orders, we have had to make some changes to our service delivery in order to keep our dogs and people safe. So these are the services we've been providing to our graduates. Every guide dog graduate received a special phone call from one of our training instructors as we started the work from home process, who provided support and answered questions relating to change in routines. Our dogs went from working every day out in the community to now being in their homes, and we also provided specific activities that our students and graduates could use to keep both their brains engaged, but also their dogs' brains engaged in learning. We have continued our dedicated call support center, offering all types of virtual support, but also our regular phone and email support. So this is an example of one of those training activities. On the next slide, it shows where we had a video component, so our graduates, regardless of disability or hearing loss, vision loss, could still engage in the activity. We invited written instructions, and one of this activity was kind of a fun one as it allows the dogs to say hi to the public without being touched or interacted with. So just to teach them how to bow. When COVID first started, we had to make some pretty significant changes to the care for our dogs within our kennels and what support we were providing to them. Within the first week of the work from home orders, we placed over 200 dogs in foster care or temporary homes around Long Island. This included very young puppies who were, 8 weeks old, to some of our adult dogs who were waiting for placement with a student that got postponed because of COVID. Now that we do have more staff back in the office, we do have multiple levels of PPE throughout all of our operations. We are still keeping most staff home, but we need to have people there to care for our dogs as we began placing students with trainings again in a slow process. All of our staff on campus have to wear their masks and face coverings at all times. Throughout this entire process, we have been offering virtual support both for veterinary needs and canine care needs, such as, my dog has this new rash, can you tell me what it looks like? Or when a dog just needed a quick look up by the vet. For our local dogs, we did do a drop-off type service where the person was able to bring the dog to our campus, place it in a kennel, and then as the person went back to their car, a staff member came out to get the dog. This avoided any human contact, and then the vet would give the graduate a call. This really allowed us to still make sure that our dogs were getting all of their needed medical care, but while also keeping everyone safe. And until late June, our training was still taking place from instructors' homes and remotely within their neighborhood. We have now began fully training within the community and have started with some placements, which is very exciting. I'm just going to touch a little bit on assistance dog etiquette. So these are just some questions to ask yourself. Important things with assistance dog etiquette are to never approach a service dog. It's always okay to speak to the person, but you shouldn't speak to the dog. This will be on the next slide. Most people know not to pet a dog, but it's also important to ensure you're not making eye contact with, taking photos of a dog, or in any way interacting with it. It's important to speak to the person, not the dog, and to offer assistance, but understand that a person may not need or want your help. This is especially important now with COVID, as many individuals who have vision loss might find it difficult to know how much distance there is between you and an individual. And calmly offering assistance, but not forcing it, is a very important thing to remind yourselves. If you're going to provide directions to someone, it's very important to be specific and give them enough information needed to determine where to go. It's really important not to inquire about why someone needs a service dog or their disabilities. There are some things that a business can expect of a service dog, and this would include now, but also if it was post-emergency and a dog needed to be placed in a shelter. So the expectations we would have from a service dog include that the dog would be non-aggressive, would not vocalize, that the dog doesn't try and take food or solicit attention. This is on the next slide. And that the dog is able to continue to do their duties without impacting the environment of those around them. So it is important to note that our dogs are trained service dogs. They have gone through nearly 2 years of training to get to the point where they are now. and they're not emotional support dogs. These are dogs that have, under the Americans with Disabilities Act, the ability to accompany their handler everywhere, including places during a disaster, such as a shelter or hospital. Just some things to keep in mind, that a dog is not required to wear a vest or any type of specific harness. You may not ask for identification or paperwork. And it's important to know that the dog needs to be under the control of the handler at all times. The best ways to identify a well-behaved service dog is through its behavior. And thank you. If you have any questions, there's some contact information.
Speaking today. Thank you, Lauren, for speaking
Yeah.
today. The information about training and etiquette, really important to hear. So thank you again. Next speaking is Shay Holloway from the American Red Cross.
Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining the annual Pet and Service Animals Preparedness event. I'm Shay. I'm a member of the Disaster Action Team for the American Red Cross of Greater New York. Most people are familiar with us, in terms of organizing blood drives, providing support and care after large-scale disasters. But our Disaster Action Team volunteers respond also to home fires every day throughout the city and across the country. Let me share a few statistics with you. Each year, there are more than 65,000 home fires. Sadly, 7 people die every day across the country due to these fires. We've learned that this is largely because you have less than 2 minutes max to get out of your home in the event of a fire. Homes that either didn't have smoke detectors or didn't have working smoke detectors have higher incidences of fatalities. That's why in New York City, by law, every home must have a working smoke detector, and landlords are obligated to provide them. On the next slide, I'm going to talk a little bit about what our Disaster Action Team does. We respond 24/7, 365 days a year to home fires and vacate. Our team members go out directly and assist residents even during COVID. While on the scene, we provide immediate care, comfort, and referrals. This can include things like clothing to basic necessities such as toothbrush, toothpaste, and diapers. In New York City, we perform an average of 9 responses a day, although unfortunately this is higher during colder months due to heaters. We have over 2,500 responses annually, and in 2019, we assisted over 10,000 people. I'm going to shift gears now and talk about how companion animals are affected by disasters. So New York City is home to over 2 million pets. During a disaster, pets, just like people, can sadly suffer death and injury. Pets become extremely scared during a disaster, and they start to rely on their natural instincts. This might prompt them to run out open windows and doors and ultimately go missing. Sadly, some owners are forced to surrender their companion animals due to lack of resources after a disaster. So the question here is, what can you do to be prepared? One of the ways to prevent these types of scenarios is to plan before a disaster strikes. On the next few slides, I'll go through a few tips on how to do this. Next slide. Prevention, of course, is the first step to keeping you and your pets and family safe. First and foremost, install smoke detectors and test them monthly. Don't ever wrap a smoke detector in plastic or foil or anything else to prevent them from functioning. Let the smoke detector do their jobs. Second, make sure you have an escape plan for you and your family. Go over it in detail, how and where you're going to escape, how to escape, where you'll gather after you escape, and how you will escape with your pets. This may include keeping crates, carriers, and leashes very handy next to exits. Most important, practice the plan. Train your pets to come when you call and know where they hide when they're scared. Next slide, let's go over some ways to keep your pets from starting a fire. The best prevention is not putting your pet in a situation where they could accidentally start a fire. Extinguish any open flames. Do not leave your pet around unattended flames. On stoves, use child protective knobs to prevent your pet from accidentally turning them on. And invest in flameless LED candles. Keep pets from potential fire-starting hazard materials when you're away. I know it sounds crazy, but we have seen cases where a fire was started by a dog chewing on a box of strike anywhere type of matches. I also met a couple at a fire who were having a nice romantic candlelit dinner. They got up from the table to go into the kitchen to get dessert, and while they were there, their dog decided to jump up on the table and see what scraps were available to them. During this time, the dog knocked over the candles, set the tablecloth on fire, the dining room furniture on fire. Fortunately, everyone got out okay and the damage was minimal. These are just a few examples of how quickly these types of events can happen. So next is help firefighters find your pets by placing a sticker on your front door or window, which states what kind of pet you have and how many pets you have. As Jess said, you can download a sticker for free from the ASPCA website. Again, be sure to know where your pets hide. Keep leashes and carriers very handy by the door, so when you evacuate with your pet. If you do evacuate with your pet and you have a sticker on your door, be sure to alert the firefighters that you have your pets and there is no need for them to search for them. If you have a sticker on your door, I promise you the firefighters will do safely everything they can do to find your pet. Next, you will need an emergency plan. So these steps are all part of an overall emergency plan, something to have in place of fires or any types of disaster. One tip, as Jess mentioned as well, which I think and we have found to be especially important, is to take pictures of you and your pets together. Take pictures of their license, vaccine info, vet info. Email all of these pics and information to yourself. That way, even if you lose your important documents and even your phone in a disaster, all this information will be available to you in your email. Again, when you evacuate, take your pet with you. Meet at an established meeting place. In terms of accommodations, reach out to family and friends and see if they can help provide temporary housing for you and your pets. Secondly, know where pet-friendly hotels are in your area. And most importantly, be sure to microchip your pets and keep this information up to date. The last point, and something just covered earlier, is how to prepare a to-go bag. So on slides 10, 11, and 12, you want to just skip through those real quick. We have a dog to-go bag, a cat to-go bag, and on slide 12, we have exotics and service dog go bags. So no matter the type of pet, go bags are essential to keeping your pet safe and comfortable during a disaster. Go bags are super easy to make. You can use a backpack or an inexpensive tote. Just be sure to include your pet essentials, such as a few days of any medication that your pet might be on, portable bowls, portable litter boxes, include food, water, and an extra leash and collar. You'll also want to include a couple of your pet's comfort items, such as toys and blankets. Go bags for service animals should include any information about how they assist you. So what happens next after a disaster? It's important to know how to help your pets recover from a disaster. Just like you, your pets experience stress. Your pet's stress hormone, cortisol, will be elevated after a disaster. This can cause an otherwise calm, docile pet to become aggressive. This aggression is normally temporary, but can last for a few days. While they're experiencing stress, be sure to be aware of their well-being and protect them and ensure their safety. Keep them away from any hazards. Also, keep them clear from people that they don't know and other animals that they are not familiar with. In a nutshell, keep them near you and ask others to be respectful. If their behavior issues persist, be sure to consult a veterinarian. Next, let's go over a few things to keep an eye on your pet after a disaster. Pets may become disoriented after disaster. This is because their scent markers and boundary that they find comfort in are no longer present. Be sure to observe your pet for any physical changes. For example, small dogs, cats, and birds are especially susceptible to lung and esophageal damage from smoke inhalation. So look for difficulty breathing. Check your pets over for burns, scratches, or punctures. If you think they could be injured or need medical care, contact your vet immediately or go to a 24/7 emergency animal hospital. So the Red Cross First Aid app can help you prepare to keep your pet safe during a disaster. The app is free and can be downloaded at your app store. Provides a lot of great info on keeping your pet healthy and safe as well. It's a pretty cool app too, in the sense that there are ways that you can actually upload and store your pet's information in there. Their veterinarian information, IDs, photos, etc. We also lay out the steps that we just went over and how to set up an emergency preparedness plan and to-go bag. Today's focus was mostly on disaster preparedness, but just be aware we also have some great information on how to keep you and your pets safe, happy, and well during the winter and summer months, and also through travel. All this information, along with what I covered today, can be found at redcross.org. There's a wealth of information on our site, and it's all free. We hope that you'll take advantage of this, and I hope too that some of this information really helps keep you and your pets and your family safer. Thank you.
Thank you, Shay, for all that helpful information. Really goes a long way to preparing for pets. So next up, we'll have Andrew Perlman from New York City Emergency Management Animal Planning Task Force. Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you, Matt, and thanks everybody for joining us this afternoon. I'd like to talk to you a little bit about the city's Animal Planning Task Force, or APTF. Very quickly, I'd like to talk to you about who we are, what we do, what we plan for, how we do what we do, and a little bit more information about the COVID-19 response. Next slide. The APTF partners are mostly nonprofit organizations like the ones shown here, along with some city agencies like the Department of Health and Mental Hygiene, the Mayor's Office of Animal Welfare, and a few others. New York City Emergency Management's role is to coordinate the efforts of all of these partners and provide support. All of the partner organizations are accustomed to working together under a common mission of supporting people, their pets, and service animals by integrating and coordinating the needs of pets, service animals, and their owners before, during, and after emergencies and disasters. Next slide. How do we do it? We do it with planning sessions and responding to emergencies. We have monthly planning sessions to discuss how we can better support people and animals when they're affected by fires, floods, severe weather, or pretty much any incident that impacts public safety. When the COVID-19 response began, these planning sessions were weekly. We plan for everyday incidents like fires, as well as large-scale disasters such as Superstorm Sandy and COVID-19. We plan on how best to provide New Yorkers with pet-friendly shelters in the event families have to evacuate their homes, how best to provide pet supplies when people are displaced with their pets, and we plan how best to conduct search and rescue operations when pets go missing due to an emergency. Each of the APTF partners brings unique skill sets that can be utilized during these responses. Next slide. What do we plan for? These are typical incidents that we plan for. Some happen very frequently, like fires. Some happen rarely, but when they do, they affect large numbers of people, often for a very long time. Even though these happen less frequently, they have an extremely big impact on New Yorkers, and our APTF partners do a great job planning for these. Let's take a closer look at how we plan for disease outbreaks. This is the very definition of a low-frequency, high-impact event. As soon as the city activated its Emergency Operations Center in response to COVID-19, the APTF partners also activated to plan and respond. Next slide. Dealing with a crisis that literally affects everyone on the planet is a far cry from responding to a local or regional emergency, such as a hurricane. New York City's Disaster Animal Response Plan, which was created by the APTF working under the guidance of New York City's emergency management, provided a blueprint for responding to Hurricane Irene in 2011 and Superstorm Sandy in 2012. But the scope and physical nature of the COVID-19 pandemic required a new set of plans and responses. And so an alternate plan, the COVID-19 Pet Response Plan, was developed. And it is the first of its kind in the country. Based on advice and guidance we got from our partners, it became clear that these were the most important factors New Yorkers wanted to deal with regarding COVID-19 and how it impacted their pets and service animals. Next slide. Regarding the New York City COVID-19 pet hotline that Jess outlined previously, New York City Emergency Management and the Mayor's Office of Animal Welfare announced its launch on April 28th. As Jess mentioned before, it is currently staffed by ASPCA employees. It serves as an information, planning, referral, and service coordination hub for New York City residents who need support for their pets during the pandemic. The hotline, as Jess mentioned, has fielded thousands of calls since its launch. Hotline operators help mitigate people's concerns about keeping their pets safe during the COVID-19 crisis. They help callers identify solutions to meet their own individual needs and connect callers to pet relief resources, such as subsidized emergency vet care, pet food, and supply distribution services. For New York City residents, back one slide, please. For New York City residents with pets requiring a higher level of care, cases are escalated to a second-tier resource desk managed by APTF partners Animal Haven, Animal Care Centers, and the Humane Society. This is all done for the coordination of temporary placement or supplemental care of their pets. This level of coordination is particularly important for pet owners who are hospitalized and have no personal resources to care for their pets in their absence. Next slide. Where do we go from here? Discussions are ongoing with all of the APTF partners in terms of how to provide ongoing support once the hotline program has ended, which will be the end of this month. Next slide. Thank you very much. Matt, back to you.
Ian, speaking today. Definitely a lot of valuable information. We also thank you, the APTF, coordinating with all the other agencies here during emergencies. So again, just want to thank all the speakers that spoke today. Before we go to questions and answers, I just wanted to touch upon briefly that we have some other upcoming National Preparedness Month events in September. So starting September 22nd, we have a Ready Girl comic book launch at 11 a.m. Also on September 22nd, we have a hurricane preparedness presentation at 6 p.m. On September 24th, we have Voices of the Disabled Planning for Emergencies at 1 p.m. on September 24th. On September 26th, we will have a kids presentation workshop at 10 a.m. And on September 29th, we will have a Preparing for Seniors in a COVID World, which will take place again on September 29th at 2 p.m. So these are some upcoming events. You can find information about these events and anything else during the month of September on New York City's website, nyc.gov/NPM, which stands for National Preparedness Month. So again, those are some of the upcoming events. We really appreciate it if people could join those events. And let's go to questions and answers. If you were not able to, definitely you can put a question in the chat box. So we'll take some of those questions right now.
Event recording is in progress, period.
Kevin, are there any questions that you see?
Event recording is in progress, period.
Yes, the first question is, what is the turnaround time for emergency cases?
Andy, would you like to speak to that, or anyone at the panel here?
I'm not quite sure. Can the person asking the question be a little bit more specific regarding emergency cases? Are they emergency vet care or something else?
So while that person is gonna write back to us, there is another question. I think Andy and Matt can answer this. It is, will shelters allow for pets during an emergency?
Absolutely. Emergency shelters are pet friendly. This was a policy that was implemented quite some time ago. We certainly don't want people to refuse to evacuate because they want to stay home with their pets. We understand that. So we make all of the emergency shelters, the evacuation shelters, pet friendly. Not only are they pet friendly, but emergency management through the APTF partners will support pet owners with crates and food and pretty much anything they need in terms of support at these shelters. So the answer is yes. We want people to evacuate to the shelters with their pets.
And also to add onto that too, service animals are allowed at all of our shelters. We don't separate the service animal from the individual. I myself, who have a guide dog, obviously that would not be acceptable. Definitely according to the ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act. So for hurricanes and emergencies, we want everyone to be safe. So for pets and service animals, we're going to be accepting, obviously, of all, because we want them to stay safe.
So if you do have a question, please, there's another question. Is, do you assist vulnerable populations, elders with preparations of a pet go bag?
So, Kevin, can you be more specific? What's the question again?
So the question is, do you assist vulnerable populations or elders with preparation of pet go bags?
Event recording is in
So
progress.
I can speak for Ready New York for myself, because I present to organizations for disabilities, but also for other New Yorkers too. We usually go through what is placed in a go bag for pets. The office, New York City Emergency Management, we also have a pet preparedness guide through Ready New York. So if anyone would like that, we can send that to individuals. But specifically for pets, we do go through the go bag, what to place in a go bag. And again, it's, usually you make a go bag as you go. So a pet go bag is for pets, but also for all individuals in the household. They're going to have a go bag also, because pets are part of the family, like was mentioned before by the commissioner. So it's important to prepare for them, but also, prepare for yourself, because as a family, you're going to be evacuating with your pets. So having a go bag for yourself, for your pets, and then really just, through the public, we educate the individuals how to put bags together. Also to stress that making a bag as you go, and things can be low cost. They don't have to be expensive. So that's another thing too.
Great, thanks so much, Matt. There's another question about, can I see this recording to review later? Yes, this recording will be on our emergency management YouTube page that you can view. Give it a couple days. I think we're gonna make sure everything is perfect with the sound and everything, but within a week or so, you'll be able to view. Subsidized emergency pet care. I have been delaying pet care due to the pandemic, and any help would be appreciated.
Yeah, I can take this one, Kevin. I would say that when the pandemic first hit New York City, the ASPCA was able to respond in terms of expanding our eligibility requirements for veterinary care. And so we were servicing New York City residents. But as the pandemic as we've gone into the summer months, those eligibility requirements have shifted a bit. And so I'd encourage you to call our hotline while we're still operating to find out if you are eligible for subsidized vet care, and if not, what alternative resources are out there in the community for you to utilize. So if you want to, I don't know if you want to share that slide again with the hotline number, but if that person wants to take that down and give us a call, they can totally reach out.
Yes, in terms of the hotline number, another person has asked the same thing. I will provide all the numbers available in the thank you email for everyone. So if anyone has any questions on numbers or contact information, all of the presenters' contact information and hotlines will be provided there, as well as emergency management. This next question is, quote unquote, this is for American Vet. Do you provide dogs for training, or can a vet have their dog trained by your organization?
That's a very good question. The dogs we provide are bred and raised within our program, trained within our program, and then placed within our program. So while we don't work with outside dogs, we do refer people to Assistance Dogs International, and that is a certifying organization that has some programs that do work with personal dogs.
Thank you so much. The next question is there training for volunteers? I think we can go down the line. For emergency management, we do have training for volunteers. It's under our CERT program, is our Community Emergency Response Team. We don't deal particularly with animals specifically, but you are trained in all basic emergency management stuff, and we have a whole course that I can also provide that link in the thank you email if anyone wants to volunteer with emergency management. And then we could go from Jess, Lauren, Shay, and if Matt or Andy has anything else to say.
So I'll jump in. The Red Cross is currently working on a program. It's an animal task force program, which obviously will work in conjunction with other agencies. We're in the midst of kind of refining that training curriculum, but we're always looking for disaster action team members. And along with that training also comes with how to work with people, how to actually help people, evacuate with their pets and what that entails and around that. So again, as a disaster action team member, you will receive a tremendous amount of that type of training.
Great, thank you so much. This is for Lauren. I get many requests from people who have disabilities and are looking for a service dog. Can I recommend your organization?
Yeah, so I'll touch on the volunteer question quick and then do the other question. So right now we've moved all of our volunteer orientations virtually, so you can still orient to our volunteer program. We can't currently welcome any on-campus volunteers, but there is still a lot of ways to assist virtually. As far as referral to our organization, we do specifically only serve blind individuals and veterans and first responders, but you're free to refer anyone my way, and I'm more than happy to get them connected with the right resource for their needs.
Great, thank you so much. So the next question is, what if a senior can't afford emergency vet care? Who do they call?
What was the first part? What if who can't afford?
What if a senior can't afford emergency vet care? Who do they call?
Again, they can call the hotline and one of our trained client services folks can walk them through the requirements, and we can assess on the phone to see what assistance we can provide. It's really kind of a case-by-case basis, but they can reach out and call and discuss with our client services team.
Perfect. In regards to everything, I don't see any other questions. We still have a couple minutes. If anyone else wants to ask a question, you are more than welcome to put in the Q&A box. Or if you want to just send it to me privately, I can also ask the question for you. We'll give another 60 to 90 seconds. If we don't have anything then, we'll end it early. And again, we'll thank everyone for being able to join us.
Kevin, can we announce now
Recording is in
what
progress.
that toll-free number is for people to take it down? I've got it in front of me if you'd like me to announce it.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay, the pet hotline is 877-204-8821. I'll repeat that one more time, 877-204-8821.
So, Lauren, I actually have a question for you. For the training, can you talk a little bit more about the training, how long it takes to train a guide dog?
Certainly. So our dogs, in theory, start their training from just a little bit after birth, where they are, exposed to new stimuli. They participate in a bridging program within our nursery where they get exposed to all sorts of fun textures and experiences. Like we have those rocker toys, those jumpers that babies sit in. We have one that the dogs can crawl all over and get used to different surfaces. After they are ready to leave their moms and are at a safe age for that, they're placed in a volunteer puppy raiser home. We have volunteer puppy raisers all up and down the eastern coast and also in Georgia and a few other places. These volunteer puppy raisers spend about 14 months with these dogs, teaching them everything from basic obedience to socializing them to different things such as the noises of cars, going to the grocery store, and then how to act both in the home and within the public. The next step is formal training, which is anywhere from 12 to 14 weeks on our campus in Smithtown. At that point, they work with the certified instructor who's gone through extensive training, learning how to train dogs to learn their specific tasks for their person. So whether that is nightmare interruption for a PTSD service dog, or opening doors and picking up dropped items, or the guide dogs who stop at obstacles and changes in elevation. At that point, their human, who's been matched to them and has also gone through an extensive application process, is invited for a 2-week training course. Usually these all happen on our campus in Smithtown. Right now we're doing them in the client's home environment and then do have a very small class on campus of just 2 students. During this time, the individual learns how to work with the dog, learns what commands to give the dog, and even just how to care for the dog. And we do go over some preparedness type information, such as what was shared here, because preparing for a service dog is extremely similar to preparing for your pet dog because they are still part of the family.
Thank you, Lauren, for all the information.
No problem.
Awesome. We have a couple more questions that I don't know we can get to all of it. One of the questions is, does the hotline remain in effect beyond 9:30?
So the ASPCA has a couple of phone numbers for New York City residents, depending on what the need is. We have our hospital, and we also have our 844 My ASPCA number, which is also in regards to veterinary care. So if you call that hotline number, it'll still go through to our client services center, and you'll just get rerouted based on what you express your need is. So you can go ahead and still call that number. You'll get to the place you need to go based on what you're indicating you have a need for.
This is the last question for actually Andy. Do you assist vulnerable population elders with a pet to New York City cooling centers and warming centers? Or are service animals welcome in New York City's cooling centers and warming centers?
Service animals are welcome anywhere a human goes. As far as cooling centers go, companion animals, pets, that has been a discussion that we've gone back and forth on. Right now, the cooling centers, which are typically libraries and community centers, do not allow pets. There's also been discussion with subject matter experts like Jess and others at the ASPCA and other APTF partners, whether it's advisable to take a pet out of their warm home into a very hot environment to get into a cooler space.
Event recording is in progress, period.
So right now, the cooling centers do not allow pets, but of course, service animals are allowed anywhere humans are allowed.
Great. Thank you so much, Andy. Since it's 2 p.m., we're going to wrap it here. If you did have any questions that we were not able to get to, or you have any additional questions, please email us at readyny@oem.nyc.gov. Again, I want to thank you everyone for coming. Thank you, Matt, for hosting. Thank you, Andy. Thank you, Shay, Lauren, and Jess. You guys were great. And if you guys, again, have any other questions, please give us an email. And this recording can be found online on our social media pages, such as YouTube, soon.